Oh, Jesus Christ, Mark. 2 episodes in one series? They just couldn't find the staff in those days. Right. Let's get this one over with. I'm so done having this series lingering over my head like a bad dream. I apologize for not being more on the ball. I've basically been a tour guide for the past 3.5 weeks, full time with an international school. So that's why I've not uploaded anything for like a month. But now that that's back to being a part-time gig, I'm now back making videos like this one. This is the episode with Diana Rigg, God rest her soul, and her little crimson friend, Mr. Sweet, hidden inside her bosom. The lizard lady, Madame Vastra, and her mates plague this tale as well, and you can kinda tell we're in for a rough one just based on these descriptions alone.
You're in for a rough night, Potter.
Typical BBC melodrama kicks this episode off as we see a young couple consumed by a cult. A mustached man is investigating the matter, going to Madame Vastra's plant shop to see if anything can be done to prevent more crimson bodies showing up in the canal. For some reason, he's capable of witnessing the bright pink corpse of his brother, but as soon as he sees considerably ugly characters, he faints. Continuously. That's the joke, guys. Fainting is just what this character does, apparently. Strax also continues his worn-out jokes about being too violent for every scenario he's thrown into. I really want to like the trio in this episode because they don't have the Doctor spearheading the situation. Considering how instrumental they have been in the arcs of Smith's era, though, perhaps had this episode come earlier, I might have ended up appreciating them more. It's a nice idea that the Doctor has gotten wrapped up in this whole optogram scenario, being equated with a monster and cared for by this creepy blind daughter character named Ada. To the episode's credit, some of the weird stuff that happens definitely had me intrigued. Mrs. Gilliflower trickling salt to feed Mr. Sweet, the way her daughter swishes about with her walking stick, the Doctor being pickled pink. There's credible elements of setup in this episode. Unfortunately, everything after the Doctor's revival back to normality leaves a lot to be desired. Just in case we didn't have enough fainting in the first 10 minutes of this episode, a woman faints for some money to create a distraction for Jenny. It was pretty amazing that this distraction was right in front of the place where she was trying to divert attention from, finding a room with gramophones that are blasting out mechanical sounds in high fidelity quality. They look good, but honestly, I don't believe that they would be able to produce such convincing factory noises at such volumes to penetrate several layers of walls. We later get this old sepia tone version of recollected events. I appreciated the attempt, but it's a shame they didn't go all the way and make it a silent film in black and white with letterbox format. Unfortunately, a lot of the dialogue is just regurgitated from earlier scenes, learning nothing aside from what happened to Clara and bigging up the mystery behind Mr. Sweet. Oh yeah, and for some reason there's this kid who's literally a walking, talking human GPS.
Turn around when possible. At the end of the road, turn right. Bear left for a quarter of a mile until I've reached your destination.
What is your name?
Thomas, sir. Thomas.
One of the most unfunny things I've ever witnessed.
Kindly do not claw and slobber at my crinoline. You know I cannot bear to look at sick people.
Diana Rigg absolutely kills it in this episode though, probably one of the only things holding the entire thing together. Clara gets revived just as conveniently as the Doctor, and suddenly he comes to the conclusion that Mrs. Gilliflower wants to poison the air. She then reveals Mr. Sweet to be permanently attached to her chest, which was kind of odd considering she's revealing this to the man who's the closest anybody has probably gotten to stopping her. The design is freakishly cool, however, so I have to at least award a point to that. It does make you wonder how a creature from 65 million years ago has survived for so long, and the fact it also took him that long to actually enact this plan of his, which is simply to gas everyone with a rocket. This doesn't make much sense considering Mr. Sweet is a parasite and requires hosts to survive, but they also make out like the scarlet rotten bodies are also required for Mr. Sweet's survival too. It's kind of confusing. Apparently Mr. Sweet wasn't the only thing hiding in Mrs. Gilliflower's bosom, and suddenly chairs are being thrown into machinery and windows. So let's talk a little more about the plan, eh? Mr. Sweet somehow built a rocket in 1893 to harbour one pot of his crimson venom that would presumably turn everyone in the world pink so that he can eat them all. You'd have thought their rocket would be stashed up to the brim with this pink stuff, seeing as they have whole vats of it at their disposal. Yet Madame Vastra and Jenny removing the one pot renders the whole plan null and void, and then Strax somehow makes it up to the top of the chimney and fucking kills Mrs. Gillyflower. This is the Doctor's reaction.
Ouch.
Wow. Was she really that far gone that there was no other choice other than to kill her? I loved that she landed on the spot where the rocket was launched from as well. No burn marks from the blast at the bottom. It's almost like a chimney is entirely inappropriate for a rocket or something. Mr. Sweet predictably gets splattered by the blind girl, despite the fact she couldn't possibly have any idea what he looks like or that he was attached to her mother the entire time.
Well, thanks a million, you three, as ever.
So, you mean to tell me everyone had time to change their clothes and Madame Vastra is just carrying that big red life-destroying vat around with her? The story ends with an unfunny prelude to the next episode with those kids from Bells of St. John. They seem to have this ability to get hold of photographs of Clara from a selection of her adventures.
It's definitely you.
Of course it's not.
And that's you too. From 1983. I found it at school.
What a complete fucking coincidence that these two kids got hold of these photographs. It's honestly like the whole Clive situation back in the episode Rose, but a million times less believable. In fairness, the Ghost episode was all about photography, so that kind of makes sense, even if it just looks like photoshopped promotional material for the show. But when exactly did they have time to take photographs on board the Russian submarine? The worst sin of all, though, is how easily these kids just believe in the idea of time travel. These could just be pictures from costume parties, you morons! So, did it suck? Yeah, kinda. I appreciated some of the creepy things and the setup was pretty interesting too. As mentioned, Diana Rigg holds the whole thing together, but most of the second and third acts destroy anything worthy in this episode. The fainting, Strax and the Thomas character, just really cringy and unnecessary humor splattered all over the place. The antagonist's plan was half-assed, and the whole story seems to just rush to get this ending set up for the next episode. What a waste of time and potential. I give The Crimson Horror a 3 out of 10. But it's a shame they didn't go all the way and make it a silent film in black and white with letterbox fucking format. One pot of this crimson venom, that would presumably... Oh my god. Kind of odd, considering she's revealing this to the man who's the closest anybody has probably got...